you knew that you had cousins that went to HBCUs. You knew they were attending HBCUs. There was never a curiosity at all? To send or not to send your kid to an HBCU?
Okay. Being a product of an HBCU and having gone to a PWI and having gone to a this has long roots. Okay, so I obviously grew up in a black household. My grandparents were mostly black. The house where I grew up in, as you know, is right in front of the church, the AME church. The neighbor's house is where the reverend lived, and his son and I grew up together, best friends. So that means, for those of you or anybody who went to church growing up, unlike yourself,
the heathens like yourself.
That means I was in the church every day. That means, even when you're not in the choir, you at choir rehearsal.
Okay.
Right? Okay, so there's blackness in that is my point.
I was going to say, where are you going with this?
Yeah, there's blackness in that. And the contrast is across the street from the house is where the school is. And the school was the opposite.
Right.
It was
very high contrast to the church.
Big contrast. It was a white school,
yes.
Small,
white,
religious.
Yeah.
Both Christian, religious, right? But white private school. Meaning so white that
so that we're going to have a different conversation about that school.
Yeah, so white in that sense that, there are less than 5 black members of my graduating class. Probably less than 15 in the whole high school at the time that I'm there. And I'm saying 15, I'm being generous.
Yeah.
So then I went to an HBCU. And after that, I went to a PWI. So I have a varied view.
Now, tell me, why did you choose to go? Did you feel the need to go to an HBCU being at that school? Was there this, I'm in this school and I'm looking around and I see who is not around me and I feel like I want to be around more of me?
Not at all.
Interesting.
Not at all. At the time,
okay.
I was excelling, right?
Okay.
I was, excelling in athletics. I was excelling in academics, and I was very confident, in probably naive confident, at 16 years old, getting ready to graduate high school. So I was like, why should I? I don't need that.
Wow. Okay.
I'm just gonna go. I'm a rocket ship. I'm about to take off. It's nothing. I don't need any of that. I don't need anything. In my mind at that time, I was just like, continue to pursue knowledge. Period.
And so it was your cousins that were like, dude, this dude's gonna need some HBCU in his life.
Yeah. It was we never talked about it. There's so much of my family that are products of HBCU and products of the military. So much. Every generation, every branch, every piece of the family is HBCU and or military. And I'm only second generation college, right? So for me, everything was new. Everything was brand new. And I had no awareness of myself or of anybody but myself. All I could think about was pursuit of knowledge, pursuit of information. Because I believe I could be Alex B. Keaton. I believe I could be Steve Jobs. I believe I could be whatever. That was my mentality.
Did you knew that you had cousins that went to HBCUs. You knew they were attending HBCUs. There was never a curiosity at all?
No, there was no information. There was no information because the media that I was taking in is pre-internet. The information I was taking in was, I'm reading publications.
Okay.
And the only thing that's coming across in publications I'm reading are, this is the guy who explored some far reaches of the world, some unexplored part of the world. This is the guy who explored some unexplored part of space. This is the guy who explored some unexplored part of technology. And that's all I know. And so when you're that person, those people come from well-funded institutions, and then there's a filter, a story filter, the journalistic filter, which says, which stories should we tell? So I was never getting the stories of HBCUs. I was never getting any of that. And so it's fortuitous that I had cousins and you had an uncle who knew me well enough to say, and you'll benefit from this. You can continue to be the machine, but eventually you're going to want to know about yourself. You're going to want to see the world from a you-centric point of view. I didn't understand it, but I trusted them. And so, we talked about before, I asked them which one was the one, which is the one. And they laughed and scoffed, but they were like, well, for you, the way that you asked that question, the only answer to that question for you would be Howard, even though they went to other schools, Tuskegee and Southern. So looking back on it, right, and now we're kind of like transitioning to my experience at HBCU, then the decision when we have kids and choosing for kids. How do I look back on that decision? And I'd love to hear how you look back on that decision as well. I think it's absolutely necessary for kids to get a solid sense of themselves at the center of their world, instead of seeing themselves from an external point of view, which happens far too often still in the States. Like, imagine watching like Charlie Brown. So Charlie Brown got one black friend named Franklin. He got to sit on the other side of the table at the Thanksgiving picnic, right? Everybody else sits on one side.
That picture is unbelievable.
He sits on the other side of the table. He just kind of strolls in. I don't know where he's been the rest of the story, but he's not the center of the story.
No.
He's not even in the center group of the story, right? So here we are, black kids watching this, very American Pie story set, and you don't follow the character that culturally and physically resembles you off to see what his home life is like or what his experience is like. And nobody else, non-black people, don't get exposed to his story either. So he's always just this foreigner or this this side note.
Random,
Right. So I think it's hugely important. And I'm not, I know we're not the only culture that values that. Jewish families have, school for their kids. And it's not just that they're learning certain academics. They're learning their cultural lessons about their place in the world and the universe, their own worldview, who we are, what decisions were made that led to you being here. What are the challenges that your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents had that inform how you need to be thinking? And here's a side note on that, right, real quick. Giannis Antetokounmpo. We watched them win the NBA championship. And this guy clearly has a deep understanding of his family. The sacrifices that his family's made and how much it means to him that his family is intact. He wouldn't know that if he didn't have an understanding of himself and his place in the world. What are you going to say?
I got to go way back.
Go way back.
Okay. You were talking about how you were in high school and you had like no calling. You felt fine. Like you're just moving towards the next step. Your cousins happen to be in an HBCU, which you really weren't. It wasn't on your radar. You weren't thinking about it. Never thought it was for you. For me, I grew up in predominantly white neighborhood.
Diamond Bar. Yeah.
No, before Diamond Bar, I grew up in San Diego.
Yeah.
San Diego's still very white. So again, from an earlier episode, we talked about how my friend and I had decided in 7th grade we were going. But it was back in 7th grade where we also felt like we needed to be around other black people. Like, there just aren't enough black people. There aren't enough of us around here.
Yeah.
And so it's funny how in this conversation today, we realize, for me, I saw it in 7th grade and you never saw it. And it's crazy because you went to like the school, the private white school that you went to was so white, like you said. It's crazy that you didn't look around and feel like I need to be around more people like me.
That's because I didn't spend the majority of my time at school. I spent the majority of my time in the church. I was either home.
So you felt like you already had it. Is that what you're saying?
I didn't ever question my own blackness per se, but I didn't, there's a difference between like living black today versus understanding your history as a black person in America and the world. And I didn't get that at the church. I didn't get that at home, right? I got that at college. I got that at Howard. I got that in African American Studies. I got that in Moreland Spring-on Library. I got that in meeting PhDs from all over the world, But so I never felt like I needed to know blackness in my everyday life because my grandparents were black, right? My parents are black. The church, the entire church, Sunday school is all black.
Yeah.
Right?
I didn't have that. Like you said, we didn't go to church, so I didn't have that, amount of blackness in my life.
Yeah.
I never felt like I didn't know who I was. I just wanted to be around more of me, more of us.
Yeah.
because like you said, I didn't have that church. So now let's transition to choosing it for our kids, right? You know, we are at the very end of our last child. He's going into an HBCU, but we have friends that have kids, and, you know, eventually they're going to decide where it is that they want to go. And I think that both of us are very opinionated in terms of where they should go. And it comes from our own experience, but also, like, we have one child who decided that they vehemently did not want to go to an HBCU, and they ended up going to random college, right? Okay, so now you go to this college, and while in the college, you're like, damn, I should have gone to an HBCU. I feel like, one, we were right. We were talking about how the kids shouldn't make the decision. We should make that decision.
Right.
Looking at the decision that we made to say, hey, you go ahead and choose your own college, and then 2 years into the college, you're like, damn, I should have gone to an HBCU. That was definitely a turning point in my opinion, in terms of, you know what, you're right. From now on, we make the decision because we know best. I think that looking at other people who are deciding where they think their kids should go, you know, I wouldn't say HBCU is for every black kid. I think that some black kids are rooted in their culture and their blackness enough to be able to go out to a UCLA or another college and feel like I'm going to be fine. You know, I know who I am and I know what I'm looking for.
Yeah, there's a balance there. So I think in the beginning of the conversation, as a people at this 2021 juncture, a lot of times we get to this conversation thinking, what will I get from historically black college, right? Will I get the same experience? Will I get funded labs? Will I get access to research? Will I get access to all that stuff? And at some point, we have to see that there's more than just getting. There's building, right?
Who am I going to become?
That too. That's also, I put that in the category of getting a little bit. Like, who am I going to become is my own development.
Okay.
But as a black family person, what institution am I going to contribute a brick into building? And how does that institution see me? That's the piece. It's like, I talk to so many parents and get their kids, and they talk about, oh yeah, one of my choices is Yale. I'm like, dude,
why?
For what?
Yeah, right.
For what reason? You're going to contribute your brick into building Yale, right? Have you been to Yale? Do you understand the politics? What has your experience been there? Like, why? What does it look like 50 years from today? Yale's going to be fine if you don't go.
Right.
But if your family, if you can get what you can get in terms of your personal development and your education from the HBCU of your choice, and your attendance there adds to the prestige and the income of that institution, what are we building 50 years down the line? What does that institution become? It becomes a beacon for the best talent, the best athletes, the best students, but it won't ever be that if we don't invest, if we don't go.
Right.
That's the deal.
I think, and I 100% agree with what you're saying. I think mine is maybe just a little bit more personal, because I feel like for black females, for those that go to the private white schools, there is so much that you are, I don't know if it's losing or missing, that the HBCU makes up for over all the years that you're in that private school. That when you graduate from the HBCU, the person who you are is so much different than the person who graduates from the regular school. I don't want to call it a white college, but just another college. Do you know what I'm saying? And I've seen it far too many times. I don't want to call out instances, but I've seen it far too many times where you can spot a black female that's went to an HBCU versus one that hasn't. It's
about that Charlie Brown story again. It's about being the center of your story, not casting yourself as the external person, which is what you'll do if all your inputs show you and the person who's most like you as not centered. So at the lunch table, I'm not at the center of that. I'm not at the cool lunch table, or I'm at the periphery, one black friend, and there's no other person like me at this table. Can't be more than one here, right? Or my entire table is, because there's a book, Black Kids Sit Together in the cafeteria, or whatever. My entire story is a fringe story and never the center of the story, the story. And that changes that HBCU experience.
God, it absolutely does. I think it has a lot to do with your self-esteem as well. It has a lot to do with the relationships that you build, and who you become or don't become as a result of the relationships that you build or don't build, based on your self-confidence. It's just, it is huge. I would say, especially if you have a black daughter, my opinion, if you have a black daughter who has, for the most part, been to predominantly white schools in their lifetime, they need an HBCU. 100% they need an HBCU. And I don't know, I would even question if they were dead set on not going to an HBCU. I'd even question why. What is it that you believe that HBCUs are unable to provide you? And in my mind, the more you fight, the more you need it.
Yeah. So I think my takeaway or my giveaway is visit frequently. They're all so different. They're not just one thing. So visit multiple.
Yeah.
And if you can get some of that experience before the college level, so that at least you can make an even decision, right? Go to a summer program, do an internship. Don't just do the, hey, we did the church trip where we visited 10 HBCUs in 4 days. That ain't gonna do it, right? But is there somebody in your family that you can ask, can they take you there? Can they walk you through? Because that's a big deal. Who you know. Can they walk you to somebody and introduce you to somebody there? And can you ask your honest questions? Then you can at least make an evaluation for yourself. And I think that is something that we have to constantly hammer home and work on. And many families will benefit from the whole deal.
I agree.
Yeah.